So my fear would be that if Wembanyama came up through the States, like I just think Europe in the international basketball world does a better job of not pretending you're something that you're not. They go, okay, guess what, dude? You are a mutant, and he seems like he actually loves basketball, which I think is rare for some of the biggest players. Where I think a lot of those guys are just like, whatever, I'm enormous. I guess I'll do this. It's better than working. They just go, okay, we're going to turn you into a pro. Like we are going to work on this is your gift, so let's maximize this gift. And in the States, I just think it plays out differently. And look, it's playing out at the top level. The best players in the NBA are not guys from the States.
Ryan, the Sparks have picks 2 and 4 in the WNBA draft. I'm wondering which direction you think they go.
Perimeter help.
I think so too. Right. Where do we start, man? Where do we start? Do we start with the NBA? Do we start with eulogizing O.J. Simpson?
No, I think O.J. was last week. So, although
I was trying to think if there's a way that we could eulogize O.J. Simpson without the murders, because that's what some people seem to want to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's always like a thing where you could just think like a hypothetical of, will someone zag on this? And I think OJ was one of those where you go, somebody's going to do it. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to be like, hey, look, other than that stuff, like, hell of a player. And you were like, yeah, actually, you don't have to do that this time. We're good.
He was good in Naked Gun.
My dad said, 83-year-old dad, do you think he did it? And then, well, he was only trying to retrieve the stuff other people stole from him. Like, what are we?
Yeah, no, that was one I remember. There's a writer who I like, but I'm not going to name it. And he went there. He was like, this sentencing is ridiculous. Yeah.
Playing games are with the Lakers and the Pelicans. And I am wondering what Zion Williamson's going to have to do to get some respect.
He was awesome all week, and it's unfortunate because New Orleans put together some nice wins to come back against Phoenix. They dominate Sacramento. Sacramento has no chance against them. And then you have Golden State, who I think, they had to win that game like 3 or 4 different times, holding off Golden State's comeback. So then to have that Sunday game going up against the Lakers at home with the 6th seed still in play, and then they played awful because I think the Lakers treated it like, hey, this is the level that we're capable of taking this to. This is what we did last year in the West. And New Orleans wasn't ready for it. I don't know if it was tough for them to integrate Brandon Ingram after missing a few weeks here and then throwing him back in. So you'd rather have the talent of Ingram, the shot creation, to take away some of the defensive attention of Zion. But when it doesn't work, you can feel like they can get in the way of each other a little bit. So that game was over at halftime, and then they play, 48 hours later. So it's hard to look at that one and go, yeah, I think New Orleans will figure this one out, because I just think the best version of the Lakers is probably more consistent than the best version of the Pelicans. But if the Pelicans get the Warriors, or especially Sacramento, if they were to win the other one, like, I think New Orleans still finds a way into the playoffs.
What happens if the Lakers lose and then lose again?
They'd probably still re-sign LeBron. I don't know what those numbers will be. Scott Boras used to always leak the price of his players to the media, and the media would just eat it up. So say a guy was 8 months out from free agency, and they're like, this guy could be worth $500 million if you think about what he does for revenue and GDP. He'd throw out these absurd numbers. And then you'd sign that player for like $300 million, and everybody'd be like, wow, what a steal. It's like, no, it's just everybody campaigned for the high end of the Boras contract. I brought this up before, but with LeBron, if it's a 160 for 3 years with no team opt-out, as remarkable as he is, as he keeps pushing the boundaries of what we think is even possible, and the fact that he didn't miss his kind of 20 to 25 games that he usually misses and is still playing this well, I still don't think you can do that deal. But the Lakers have, when they signed Kobe to that ridiculous extension, that it wasn't worth it. Their selling point was, we want the NBA stars to know that when you're a Laker, we take care of the stars. So that whole thing's going to be put to the test again. And I think they were a nice surprise last year after they figured it out. This year, there's a bit of the same. I mean, it's been a pretty good team here since Rui has been in the starting lineup, since D'Angelo Russell's been on fire now for 3 months, and he's certainly not my favorite. So I'm sort of expecting for that rough playoff series where you were wondering, can we even close with this guy? Because I think that's still in there. But AD has gone from, wondering if he'd be the best player in the league to, can you even re-sign him, to now I think being kind of underappreciated because he's been their best player and he's played the most games, most minutes he's played in like 7 years. So I think the West is so packed that, the Lakers get to the Western Conference Finals are not getting out of the play-in. I don't know that it changes the LeBron question that much, even though I think sometimes that's how business is done. Like, there's going to be a couple teams, a couple big-time players that I love that probably get bounced really early. And it's like, well, did they get bounced because they're not really that guy, or they're incapable of taking it up to that level, or they're young and they need to take their scars now? Or is it, hey, it's a packed West? Like, I have no idea, guys. This has been, I'm sure there's other years where I was certainly not super confident in picking out the entire first round, but I don't know. This is unbelievable how open this is, and that's why I still always go back to Denver.
Should the Lakers, is there a school of thought where you're like, we should lose this game, or we should try to game this situation so we get to play the Thunder rather than the Nuggets?
I just think it's so dangerous in a one-game thing. Like, I'd be shocked that you would think this, especially as an athlete. No offense to Macon.
None taken.
I just think it's basketball, so it seems easier to me. Like, you can
it's
decide to win the next game.
But think about it if it's Golden State and they just shoot the lights out, and now
Yeah.
you're not in the playoffs because you tanked a game to get the better matchup against Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
I think there's certain times where teams kind of jostle with their seeding. Like, Dallas didn't care about chasing the Clippers towards the end. Cleveland tanked to get Orlando, and Orlando was like, cool, great. The East got really weird there the last couple of days. If you're going to blow the first game thinking we're good enough to beat whoever the 9 and 10 is, I just don't look. If there was that much separation between the Lakers and 9 and 10, then the Lakers would have been 1 through 6. And
Right.
that whole thing wasn't slotted until the very end. So I would not do that. And I doubt many players or coaches would be willing to take that risk for the preferable matchup.
So there is seeding chicanery afoot. Is there an argument to be made that a top seed should be able to pick their opponent to get rid of some of this? Or top seeds? Is that ever in our future?
I'm not against it, but I do think we're changing a lot of things very quickly. And part of that is motivated by trying to find a way to have more event programming for the television partners. I don't love everything about the play-in game. When I bring up the standings and look at this and I go, okay, say Atlanta went 36-46.
Yeah.
And they're 11 games behind Philly.
Yeah.
And yet what did we just do for 6 months? So now that team has a chance to actually find a way to get into the playoffs. And Philly was 11 games better than them and would have been even, granted, Philly would have been the 7 if Embiid was healthy the entire time. And I understand, once it's weighted, all Philly has to do is win 1 of 2. Atlanta's going to win 2 on the road. But I don't love that. I think there'll be certain years where that 6 and 10 are so different as teams. And I'm going, wait, this team still has a chance to get into the playoffs. And then that 10 seed will win 2 games. They'll be terrible. Then they'll play a 7-game series against the 1 seed, and it won't be the matchup that we want. And you go, was this worth it? So it doesn't mean, it's just like the college football expansion thing. Like Michigan and Ohio State next year, it's not going to mean what it just meant. It just isn't. So you can talk about, well, we have more stuff and more programming. So, then you have the in-season tournament, which actually, once it played out and everybody kind of understood it, and I think that continues to grow and have more attention because now we've gone through a season of it. But then making your point, like, add another thing where I just get nervous about, like, all the fixes everybody's tried to do. We try to change the all-star games in all these different sports. We've changed the schedule in baseball like 3 different times. Football just keeps adding and adding and adding, decides to play on Christmas for families.
We like that.
So I just.
We families like that.
Yeah, right. No, but just it's not about wiping out the NBA part of it. We're doing this so your family can really celebrate Jesus.
Yep, faith, family, football.
It might be the right call, but I just don't think we need to change formats like every single year. And we're in a rhythm here right now where everybody's pushing change. I mean, do you like it? Would you say, hey, you know what, this moves all the other stuff around, and then you just get to pick, like the pick of it, the actual selection once it's announced?
Must see TV.
There's a little more tension because the team's like, you picked us. Fuck you. Like now, chances are there's a reason they were picked, and it's not going to be a riveting series. But in the event that it is, there's a little disrespect that goes with being picked. So I think that's fun too.
I don't like change. I'd like to see 1-8 and 2-7 right now.
Got you. Okay. Talking about the West, I think Oklahoma City Thunder, you look up if you're a casual and you're like, damn, this team just won like 25 games 2 years ago, and they don't have your traditional star power. SGA is like kind of quiet. He doesn't like the spotlight. Chet's awesome, but the market doesn't demand a lot of attention. How did this happen? Take me soup to nuts through how they got to where they got so quickly. Seems like they executed, the transition from what they were really nicely.
Well, they're a top 3 offensive team. They're a top 4 defensive team. They're the number 2 shooting team. And the only hole in their game would probably be their rebounding. Depending on what rebounding number you can look at there, they're 28th out of 30 teams in rebounding rate. And that's definitely something where I'm concerned about them in a series against another big front line. But with Minnesota and Denver being in the 2-3, that's an advantage. We'll see what happens here with the Lakers, but if it ends up being one of those smaller teams like, and then in the 1-4 or 1-5, it would be smaller teams that probably would rather play smaller, the Clippers and Dallas. So if you look at history, young teams usually don't win. If you go by the 10 youngest teams in NBA history, like 7 of the 10 that have won are like 1981 or earlier. And then you did have the Golden State Warriors in 15 win probably a year ahead of schedule from their peak in 16. And then obviously Durant changed the peak altogether. So normally this does not happen, but I think Sam Presti's incredible. Daigneault, their coach, is on it in a way that I think you can only be this into it when it's your first head coaching job. There's mistakes that you'll learn along the way about, say your next job with all the coaches that we've talked about or that you've played for, where it's like, okay, the second time around, if the coach has some good instincts, like he's just going to be that much better. But I think there's an attention to detail with this being Daigneault's first job that you can see night in and night out. Presti built a team that he wanted to have everyone on the floor be capable of like dribbling, passing, and getting themselves free, providing some kind of offense if the ball ended up in their hands. So he wanted like really multiple skill, bigger players that all could kind of make decisions. And this isn't, like when I was trying to figure out what they were doing with the draft, you talk to other teams, they go, Presti's got this whole vision. Like there's this guy they drafted from the Australian League who's like 6'9", and he's actually like a pretty good player. He doesn't even play. And it's such an awesome team to see like, hey, we got stuck on this side. Okay, well, this guy can go and do this over here. Giddey can run the offense. Jalen Williams, can run the offense. Chet actually has a lot of ball skills, but you don't even need him to do it all that much. And then SGA gets to wherever he wants to get on the floor whenever he wants to. He shoots free throws at an incredibly high rate, but he's a bit more of an old school guy. Like, look, there's some calls that he gets that I hate, but he does a really good job of just getting you up in the air. And that's not the call an official's going to debate of what the intent was the entire time. Like you're always going to get that kind of call. And they just shoot it. And they like young teams usually don't defend like this. There's been a few, but they defend at a really high level. And there's just a lot of trust. Now you may go, okay, but none of them have ever done it anywhere before, whether it was, there's just not enough before for the age of this roster. So this normally doesn't happen, especially being the 1 seed in a stacked league, and Denver blowing that game to San Antonio on Friday night kind of changed this. But, the records all would have been within a game of each other. But I know I have little hesitation going like, all right, you really like them, and there's a lot of stats that you really like, but do you actually think these guys, without any experience together, are going to come out of the West? Like, that's a big ask. I think some people, if it ends up being the Lakers, I think a lot of people are going to pick the Lakers.
Right. That's what I was like. What you mentioned the Spurs. I mean, like Wemby's not in the playoffs, but
Should that be a change where another team
we
gets
just
to draft
put Wemby
Wemby
in
for
the
the
playoffs.
playoffs?
We just put Wemby in the playoffs. That's
the 1 seed can have any player that's not in the play-in.
Yeah. Who you adding is a Wemby? No, my question about Wemby was
because I just real quick though, I always love when people are like, no, you should do that. But it's always entertainment. And you're like, yeah, if my mom played point guard, that would be interesting.
That would be interesting.
But
what about if Wemby was born in America? How differently would this have played out? I know he'd still be amazing, but what do you think the run up to his stardom would have looked like? Would he have been a college player? Would he gone straight to the pros? Like, would he have been a worse player?
I think he would have been worse. There's very clearly an issue. This is funny because like we're on this baseball thing right now with all these pitchers getting hurt, and made me think like if I was a guy who just tweeted a lot and be like, which sport does the American youth have the best chance of feeling optimized or whatever? Because like football camps and the 7-on-7s, and then you dip your toes into that world and people get mad at that. The AAU basketball thing's been getting killed forever, and now baseball with spin rate, like everybody's just hurt. I guess we'll see. It's been a bad opening couple weeks. Yeah, still need more data, but there's a like I think what's happening with some of the American basketball stuff is that it's not just AAU, it's the individual drilling. And I've had this theory now for a little while where I'll see guys that are just incredible, best shot makers we've ever had in the game, more guys out on the floor that can score and get you a bucket than we've ever had. It's not even debatable. It just isn't. People want to yell in the other direction. But there's just other parts of the game where I'm like, well, okay, that guy's like incredibly skilled, but does he actually like know what the hell is going on?
Right.
And I asked some of the guys that some of the hockey guys that work out here in Los Angeles, and I said, hey, this is this basketball theory I have. I'm like, you guys that work in the NHL, like, I see some of these highlights of this incredible stick work and all the stuff these guys do. Do you talk about this at all? Is there a comparable conversation to what I'm suggesting about individual skill development, but not necessarily game development? And he was like, yeah, it's all we talk about. He said, we talk about it all the time. So my fear would be that if Wembanyama came up through the States, like I just think Europe in the international basketball world does a better job of not pretending you're something that you're not. They go, okay, guess what, dude? You are a mutant, and he seems like he actually loves basketball, which I think is rare for some of the biggest players, where I think a lot of those guys are just like, whatever, I'm enormous. I guess I'll do this. It's better than working. They just go, okay, we're going to turn you into a pro. Like, we are going to work on, this is your gift. So let's maximize this gift. And in the States, I just think it plays out differently. And look, it's playing out at the top level. The best players in the NBA are not guys from the States. I mean, Embiid came here early enough to still play in high school.
Right.
Jokic is the most unlikely MVP in the history of the league. Giannis was a mid-round pick where you were like, who is this guy? Then he got enormous. Luka, so SGA is Canadian. I mean, it's not like he's from Rhodes, but you get the point here. Like, the international guys are taking over. I think the other difference is if he was American, he would have a shitty podcast probably already.
Yeah, well, eventually we're not going to win any fucking Olympics.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like that Macon thought about it.
What's your take? Are we going to win are we going to be losing the Olympics on the reg in the future?
The depth is still better. This is not us against the world here. This isn't Detroit.
No, I understand.
So,
hey, well, okay. Jalen Brunson is now, 2 years ago? I've never been more wrong about anything than I was about Jalen Brunson. What were you most right about this season, Rye, and what were you most wrong about?
Ooh. Really good. Really good. I went 21-9 on team total, 6-0 on locks. So I won the
Wow.
contest this year.
Wow.
So that's a good number.
And did you bet those?
No,
Not a gambler.
not allowed to here in California.
Right.
Ohtani. By the way, I apologize to Ohtani.
You did?
No, I'm doing it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would. Who do I tell?
The translator.
I apologize to Ohtani's translator. I thought he was the guy gambling.
Everybody did because they wanted to. There's
Well,
something wrong with us.
Well, there is something wrong with us, but also the evidence I thought like pointed to him possibly being a gambler. Now there are people that tweeted me that were like, "You got anything to say about Ohtani?" I'm like, "Yeah, fucking, I was wrong, dude. I'm not like a, I don't know, I'm not like a legal expert here."
Well, yeah, it would have been more fun. It would have been more dramatic if it were a Jonte Porter, my eye hurts situation.
The Occam's razor, man. You know about the Occam's razor.
Sure do.
It was the translator all along. All right, so talking.
No, I want to stay on this.
You want to stay on
just for a second because Bacon, it's a good question. I will answer. I promise. But I was wrong about Scoot Henderson. TBD. How about that? TBD. I thought he'd be better. He had a nice closing last month, but I thought he was going to be like really good, and he wasn't really good this year. And but with anybody this young, talk to me next April is what I've told everybody. I know it's not good. There's a lot of numbers that are actually tragically bad. He was better the last month, more comfortable. You could see him shoot it better, just understood the game a little bit better. But that's that could be a potential draft whiff.
It's my Brian Edwards. I'm still waiting for Brian Edwards to turn the corner. Some of the promise he showed at SC.
There's a bunch of those SC guys that I was like, oh, this guy has to be awesome.
They got a guy this year who looks like a total fucking stud. He looks like AJ Brown part 2. The wide receiver from SC. Leggett. Yeah.
Oh,
you mean South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm talking about South Carolina.
Xavier Leggett. I love him. I mean, he's a little older.
Am I supposed to say USC? I think at USC. I think at LA.
But did you say
SC? I said SC.
Oh, that's definitely Southern Cal.
Okay.
Because of the logo.
Really?
Yeah.
So what's South Carolina?
They're in a bad spot. They're either USC East or they're South Carolina.
I think SC suffices. Yeah. Okay.
I was so confused. I was going like, what's going on here? I would say, though, that South Carolina has defensive ends every year that I think are good. I have a theory on like uniform. Like every guard and tackle from Tennessee in those uniforms, I'm like, he must be awesome.
Yeah.
It's like,
he looks good.
No, he's terrible.
Every skill guy from Oregon.
Yeah. I would say defensive backs for Texas over the years, like going all the way to Michael Ruff. I'm like, this guy has to be incredible.
Here's a sidebar for you, Ryan, about football with the draft coming up. I'm kind of curious if Ryen Russillo today was drafted to be in the NFL and you were attending the draft. Who are the people sitting at the table with you? You get 8 tickets.
Wow.
Solo.
No, you can't do that. You got to fill 8 spots. You got to fill 8 spots. Sorry. Commissioner Goodell's calling.
There's no way I would bring a girl because she'd be like going, I got him. There's no way.
Can't let that happen.
Right. I mean, these guys that bring their girlfriends, you're like, you better be the one, or she's going to be in these videos for like a really long time.
For the rest of your life.
Right. And then your wife is going to be like, I can't believe you dated her. So just a message to the young guys, it better be real. But we know down south, they get that family thing started sooner. So, it makes sense. What? It's just true. Look at the numbers.
I know. In Manhattan Beach, they don't start until like 55.
Northeast there's some real late bloomers that start like looking into adoption.
So you haven't answered.
He would just have a bunch of point
guards. Is this
guards.
the longest way to say he's not inviting Bill Simmons?
I don't think I'd invite Bill.
Clip it.
No, I mean, that's a big moment there.
I'm not doing the breakouts anymore.
His dad. There we go. We got
my dad, my brothers, we'd be coming out there like the fucking Von Erichs.
Oh, perfect.
Right.
Perfect. Can we talk about Iron Claw?
All right, so I'm halfway through it. Are they?
What? How is this not a book? What the fuck? Turn the movie off? There's nothing. I mean, it would be asinine for me, a man with 3 children and 2 jobs, to be like, what scenario are you turning off Iron Claw?
I have 30 children. They play every night.
There's not enough white American players in the NBA.
I didn't turn it off because I wasn't into it. I mean, look, Zac Efron is my guy. We were neighbors for a little while.
Really?
I even made it over there one night. It was
Really?
incredible.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, big time. He doesn't live there anymore though. So some of these guys, when they get really rich out here, they go up to like Calabasas for this. You'd be a Calabasas guy. The square footage, you couldn't handle it down here. You wouldn't like everybody being on top of each other.
No, I couldn't do that.
I've just accepted it, but. Yeah, I'm a big Zac Efron guy. I didn't turn it off because I didn't like it. I would ask this though: do they think some people watching that think the storylines aren't scripted?
No, I mean, I'm not sure, dude. I'm not
Right?
sure.
It's like, hey, the hard work and all of this, it can pay off, and you're kind of like, so yeah. I think it'd be me, my dad, my brothers, and then Ludacris, because I think Ludacris is such a good time. I can't imagine him not being fun. And, Ludacris to me is like the first Drake, because you're like, wait, am I going to be like, no one's ever going to pick Luda as your top 5 MCs. But then every time it comes on, you go, this is so much fun.
There's a lot of people in this generation that are picking Drake as their top 5 MCs. Drake. And then I don't know.
Drake's fun. When it comes on, I'm not mad. But it's not a go-to. I was listening to Reasonable Doubt 96 today.
Mm-hmm.
People that think that that's better than Illmatic, just fucking stop going outside.
I guess I'm staying inside.
Well, that's going to be tough for you. You like the rivers.
Yeah,
Macon, who are your top 5 MCs?
My top 5 MC?
No,
Macon's?
Macon.
I don't know what MC means. I think of Master of Ceremonies.
You're like Jimmy Miller? The guy who does a banquet here locally.
No, sincerely, you all are talking about, I think, rap artists, but referring to them as MCs. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Nelly, one.
Have we updated your system lately?
No.
Country Grammar.
Yeah, Country Grammar.
Okay. Can we get back into basketball or no? Or we just past basketball? Hey, Ryan.
We never did Ohtani, but that's all right.
Oh, well, do Ohtani.
I just don't understand what's wrong with our culture in that we want it to be the bad thing instead of, you said, hey, the evidence there was also like a very straight line evidence of like,
you're right.
Yeah, very well could have had this happen to him. And I'm telling you right now, nobody wants to hear this, but like, if you have that kind of money and you have financial people moving around, which is kind of the way that the world works at that level, it's super easy for you, if you're not looking at your accounts all the time, for this to actually happen. Or if you are on your accounts all the time, you have to call somebody and go, hey, what happened here? And it's like, oh, this got moved into this or whatever. And you're like, okay, fine. Like these guys that never look at it, clearly he was one of them.
I just couldn't believe that the bookie was given a line of credit like that.
Well, because they knew, because Ohtani would have to pay it.
Well, and the story changed 72 hours after the first story.
That was a thing as well. So yeah, there were some reasons where I think like our cynicism was warranted in this situation.
I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm talking about the rooting part of it.
I was not rooting for this.
Right. People were rooting for it.
No. I just didn't want to get the wool pulled over my eyes and be a big naive dummy. Because sometimes I do. I look for the good in people, and I thought maybe this was a blind spot for me if I. You want to know when I realized how fucking weird we are?
When? Like when Bob Odenkirk had a heart attack, he had like triple the followers. And I just would love to know who the person is. It's like, I was on the fence about this guy's content, but he fucking had a heart attack. Follow. Like that's what we're like. OJ's I Did It went back on the bestseller list after he died. Like,
yeah, we're fucking weird, dude. We're weird.
What were you doing? Like 20 years plus 30 years almost go by and you're like, he's dead. Let me check that out. I'm going to order it.
Yeah, better get it now.
Stay topical.
Hey, if you put Prime Jordan on the Hawks with their current seeding, how far are they going?
Eastern Conference Finals, at least.
Ooh, so they're getting by Boston.
Is Trey playing? I said Eastern Conference Finals, at least.
Well, it'd be the 1-8 given their current standing.
Oh, they're in the seeding.
Ooh,
yeah.
Checkmate.
Hate to get technical.
You want
is Trey playing or is Trey watching?
Full roster. Just add Jordan.
Full roster.
So Trey's minutes, Boston still wins.
Okay. This year's Boston team plays the Big Three.
of the 08
Boston
Celtics.
Celtics of the 08 Celtics.
Big three.
That's interesting. Matt had a different take.
I just thought they'd struggle to guard the Celtics on the perimeter.
Which Celtics?
Porzingis.
Okay.
Garnett could guard anybody.
Garnett's my all-time favorite player, so that hurts me to say.
That hurts you to make that pick. Then.
Wait,
think that.
so why do you think he'd have a hard time with Porzingis? You think he just?
I just think he would pull Garnett away from the rim, and the modern Celtics would be able to attack.
PJ Brown back there? I don't know, man. Garnett, the best part about Garnett, and there was even a peak version of him before the Celtics, but like when he would switch out on guards, it was like, what is this? Like, I'm not used to seeing this before.
The KG, like from the Timberwolves, I feel like it sounds stupid to say, but kids don't remember him for that. There's a whole generation that thinks of him as Boston KG.
Yeah, and that's wrong.
And the KG from the T-Wolves was like the way they think about John Elway. I always use that example. You saw John Elway in the mid-90s winning his Super Bowl, the helicopter John Elway.
The new unis.
The new uni. Yeah, like that was not the John Elway that my dad described. And most people in my generation, didn't get to see that John Elway. I feel like the KG from the Wolves, we kind of lost that in the shuffle.
Yeah, early Elway would have gotten destroyed on TV shows for a decade plus.
Why?
We wouldn't be allowed to just say he was good because it's a little like the Josh Allen thing, but Josh Allen hasn't lost in the Super Bowls the way Elway did.
Right.
Like the Josh Allen stuff towards the end of this year.
You're talking about the losses. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because the losses were in the Super Bowls. And that just what happens is, like, I think there are certain players, it's a very short list of like, I don't think you could win with this guy. But to say like, hey, you'll never win with this guy, and that's what ended up happening to Elway. Garnett reminds me of C. Long a little bit.
Oh, clearly.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Like,
yeah,
you lose for a long stretch of your career.
Yes.
Dynamic, both on and off the field.
I'm like half a Garnett.
Yeah, but then it's like
same career.
Hey, maybe it's C. Long. Maybe he's wired wrong. Maybe he's a loser. Maybe he doesn't have the winning gene. Maybe he didn't get that one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kyle has it, and then
he goes to the league and loses too. Losers. Who does Boston want to see? Speaking of Boston, as the 8th seed, probably not Philly, or am I wrong?
I would imagine there's a little Miami PTSD, but if they're there's a mental toughness question with them. I would say they just settle for really tough isolation shots to close tight games that becomes predictable, and they're not always like, it's kind of back to my shot making thing, is that both Tatum and Brown are such great individual scorers and creators that they kind of default to it when things get a little tight. And it also means like the other four guys are watching when you're just holding the ball that long. So I don't love it, despite the fact that they just put up a historic number with this point differential for the regular season. So like every team that has this point differential has won an NBA title. So I wonder if there's any kind of Miami PTSD, even though we got to 82 games of them, and I still don't know what to expect from that team, especially on offense, that like there's no way you're actually going to lose to them, even though they shouldn't have lost to them last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they did. So their history against Philly is phenomenal. So I can't imagine that they're actually like when they're hanging out and talking going, oh no, like we really want this team versus that team. I think you would say you'd rather have Miami because the Embiid wildcard part of it. But Embiid is so amazing. He hasn't even looked that good. And he put up huge numbers. And then he gets hurt in the Orlando game. And then there's still something on the line for like the last day. And they sit him, maybe more because of Brooklyn, just to try to get him ready for the start of this whole thing. And I just like betting on him being healthy all the way through. Maybe they get to the play-in, but healthy all the way through a first round, even with the extra time. Like I thought he started to move a little bit better as opposed to the first game that he came back. So let's just say Boston probably prefer Miami despite the history being better against Philadelphia, because there's a scenario here where Embiid is okay and it's fine. And, you're having him go up against Porzingis and Horford, and maybe you're beating up on those guys a little bit. It might be just an easier physical matchup against Miami than it is Embiid just because of who he is physically and the fact that it's Porzingis with his injury history and Horford, who's 37.
For the casuals, how good is Paolo Banchero? What's the most likely outcome from Cavs Magic?
So going into the end of this run, I've loved watching Orlando, but they get real clunky offensively in some of the bigger spots. And Paolo's had to save them a lot this season. Like Paolo went on a really, really special run. They beat Denver. It was right around the holidays, and he was just putting together this 2-week stretch of like, man, like what can't this guy do? Because when you watched him at Duke, as I know you did, it wasn't just that he was this big scorer who showed you enough shooting that you thought he could get even better. I thought making his playmaking and his willing to pass and see some passes that maybe other guys didn't see. Like it's clear he wants to be like an awesome teammate. He's not just some guy who's like, hey, I can score, so let me try to score every single time down here, which a lot of young guys, it's like how cool you can score a lot, but everything else you do is awful. So your minutes actually can hurt us a little bit despite your box score saying you score all these points. And I thought Paolo was so much more than just that. So I like Franz. I love Suggs and his development and this Jonathan Isaac thing of this like super sub defensively coming in and just wrecking games and looking like one of the best defensive players in the league. Like I've loved all of it, but I just don't know that I trust their execution late offensively. And there's a lot of numbers that would back that up. So I was like, hey, you can like him, but you're probably not going to pick him in the first round. And then Cleveland happens. Cleveland has been a mess. This is a team that went 17-1, and Garland and Mobley missed more than half of those games when they went 17-1. But Mitchell, they've been managing his injury. He hasn't shot the ball well with him being in and out of the lineup. And as much as I liked Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen together and the defensive resume that they put up last year, that was the best defense in the league, it may be a little too old school to play with two big guys like Allen and Mobley in a playoff series, because Allen, he's always around the rim. Mobley's, they kind of position him in different spots. So like they're going to have to get creative with how they do these substitution patterns, and they may have to close with whatever guard is healthy. And if it's both guards, they still may go Niang and Strus around Allen, and then Mobley will come in depending on the matchup or what they like. Because Orlando's massive too, so maybe Mobley plays more minutes than we would think, and he's had some bright moments since he's come back and been healthy. But of the two teams, even with the limitations on Orlando's offensive execution, it's just really hard to back Cleveland right now because this has been an extended period of time where they haven't been a very good team.
Bouncing around a little bit here. Who's Luka in the NFL? Is there a comp for him at this stage with all the pressure on him and kind of the perception that he hasn't gotten over the hump? Because I love the guy. I mean, obviously, but the noise has started to creep in.
It probably has to be a quarterback, right?
Right.
Pick a quarterback here. It'd probably be weird if I was like Brian Burns, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Did we just say
Did somebody try to send over 3 fucking ones for Luka last year? And can you believe if the Rams had made that trade?
Yeah, that's a weird one. You were all over that. I remember talking to you about it, and it was like, wait, what are they trying to do? And then they don't want to do it. All right, well, he must be. It's like, no, we're going to spend 9 figures on guards. It's like, all right.
Is Luka Lamar?
No, I think I've done this segment every year. I do quarterbacks as NBA players.
Okay.
And then Nick Wright steals it later that week.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's done it like 3 years in a row. One year, the body wasn't even cold yet. Like, he did it later that day. And he just switched them all around. Like, so I did Lamar is Embiid, and I thought it made a lot of sense. Like, statistically off the charts, has the MVPs, doesn't have the playoff success, but everybody actually likes him, right?
Yeah.
And then he just switched around, and like for a week or 2 weeks, he started selling this Lamar as James Harden thing. MVPs, got a lot of stats. The difference is I think there's a lot more people rooting against James Harden than there are Embiid. And I actually don't think there's that many people rooting against Lamar Jackson, despite what a hoodie would have you believe that pops up every now and then when Lamar has a good game. So if it's a quarterback, it would have to be somebody like Luka is the second best player in the league right now. I think it's a floating tier of Jokic, Giannis, and Luka. I voted Luka second for MVP. feel good about it. But him not getting over the hump, well, he made it to a Western Conference Finals when that team wasn't very good. The
Not
team
very
around him, Allen's probably had a better team. But when you look at Allen's playoff stats, you're like, wait, you're giving this guy shit? Like, you're giving this guy a hard time because he doesn't beat Mahomes, which
Right.
basically nobody does. So
he might be Luka. Luka might be Josh. Now Kingston just flashed a really good one up. Luka being Justin Herbert because of the organizational dysfunction and the rare talent. And, the fact that a lot of people are in the guy's camp, but there's also a lot of people that don't like the guy.
yeah, but Luka's done more. Herbert's not done
Exactly.
anything
That's why it doesn't work. I think the Josh Allen one actually works.
Because it has to be somebody that you could go, all right, look, is it possible you could think this guy is playing the position of anyone in the league? And with Mahomes hanging around for the next 10 years, it's going to be hard to say that.
Yeah, no one's going to really.
But
yeah,
Allen, at least, like I just decided this year when it was all said and done, I was like, I'm not going to do the weekly Allen legacy thing anymore. Like, he's fucking awesome. And maybe there's 2 or 3 teams that like their situation better than him, but that's probably 3 teams is probably too long of a list. And with Luka, I think the Western Conference Finals thing changes it a little bit. If he'd getting bounced by the Clippers like he had, and then doesn't have that, they shut it down last year. Last year was a disaster. Kyrie wasn't playing a ton for him either. So,
and he's played good this year, right?
Kyrie's been awesome, man.
Yeah.
He's been awesome, and it's always an interesting conversation around Kyrie because, I've never cared about him leaving Boston. Honestly, that 18 team was one of the most miserable watching experiences I've ever had with that team. And the way he handled it wasn't cool, but whatever, do your thing. I don't care enough about it to take it personally and be upset. But there was just a string of whenever there was a quiet Kyrie phase for 2 or 3 months, you knew you know what, it's been a little too quiet. Mm-hmm. And then he would remind us all of why we'd anticipate the next thing with him. And it's been really quiet in the best way. And clearly Luka trusts him with big possessions late in a tight game in a way that I don't think he's ever trusted anybody else that he's played with. So it takes somebody that's really talented for Luka to trust, but also it takes somebody who needs to be a little further in their career to understand, despite how talented Kyrie is, Luka's just still going to have the ball a ton. And not everybody enjoys that, even though Luka pretty much optimizes every offensive possession as well as anybody else in the league besides Jokic.
We should talk about Pacers Bucks before we finish up.
Should we?
Probably a bunch of Pacers fans that are like, "What the fuck?" The Bucks, are they kind of as wounded as we see them coming into the playoffs? Like this is actually a pretty good draw for the Pacers.
It's a great draw for the Pacers if you go by the regular season stuff. They took 4 out of 5 against them.
Yeah,
I mean that's
including
incredible.
Ballgate, which is we just thought I didn't even
mention
love
Ballgate.
This. Dallas, yeah, I want to get you going on that. Dallas and the Clippers, to me, a casual is a lot of fucking fun. I think that's a really fun series. Ever since they tried to punk Luka when he was real young, and they were all calling him a bitch and white boy and stuff, and he was like, "No, I'm different. I'm not an American white boy." But this series is going to be heated. Can you explain Ballgate to me, as you understand it now that time has passed?
Yeah. So there's some technicalities on Ballgate. Let me just make sure I get the date right here. I didn't have this in my notes. So, all right. So
I've never seen a thing while you're looking. I've never seen a thing that some people were so animated during and some people were just so not. All at the same time, within a 10-foot radius, there were people who were just incensed, and then some people having a casual conversation. Very confusing.
Yeah, so I got to go back here to December. When is it? December 13th.
Looks like it.
Chris Middleton's Giannis is super mad. He's just standing there.
Right. So he scored 64.
64 points.
He also took 32 free throws. Because this is pre-Russillo timeline of the NBA season when I fixed officiating.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, no, a nation thanks me.
Mm-hmm.
and was it Jordan Nwora?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, no, that's not it because he scored 19. There's somebody else. Somebody else had scored his first point.
Yeah, it was
Oscar Sheboy.
Yeah, Sheboy. But he had already scored in the in-season tournament, but that stat didn't count.
Yes.
So
That's the funniest part of it.
Right. So then apparently it wasn't even the right ball, but Giannis just decided. And look, Neesmith is unhinged, but he's the son of a landscaper, so I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's good.
Neesmith just like he's going to get a couple flagrants in this series, and Neesmith's turned himself into a guy. Like he's found a role, really aggressive, everything. He knocks down enough shots, and good for him. But there was already enough stuff brewing. There had been a little carryover from another game, and so then Giannis decides, and this is the part of Giannis that I like, is that when Giannis becomes unhinged, like when Giannis takes the floor, there's never a moment where I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's into it tonight. I mean, this is what I like about it. This is what we want from our guys. It's like he wants to go at everybody. So then when he felt like he was disrespected, he goes for – they almost blew the lead, remember, too. So he had to come back in, and then it was like, oh, fuck him because he added to all these points. It's like, well, I don't know. They put him back in there. Like, you can't stop him tonight. The free throw is obviously super annoying. And then he thinks that the Pacers stole the ball to give it to Schwebe, which I didn't even understand. Like, I hadn't really heard about the first point.
Yes.
That you just get the ball.
Yeah,
so that was kind of news to me. And then there's this one assistant who I think is kind of funny with the Pacers, like getting into it with Giannis. And so then Giannis just starts running into the tunnels being like, fuck you, where's my ball? And he kind of sounded like a mad 12-year-old afterwards. But with him, if I'm getting this kind of effort and passion every single game, I will gladly take that part of it too. So I love it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, listen, he's a big skinny guy, but I wouldn't want to get in his fucking way.
You think he's skinny?
Giannis?
I mean, I just don't think of him as like a big like a DJ Burns type. There's a lot in between DJ Burns and Giannis. I realize that, but yeah, like basketball players generally don't scare me. But when I watched him run through that tunnel, I was like, I don't know if I want to get in his fucking way. And Greek guys usually don't scare me.
So Nick Calathis, you've never been intimidated.
No. I wanted to ask you about Kispert.
Was there ever an
I wanted to
NBA
ask you
guy
about
that stepped to
Kispert.
you?
What do you think?
Wait, no. We're not done yet.
Ask him about JaVale McGee.
JaVale McGee stepped to you?
No, he didn't step to me. He stepped over me, dude. I went to dap him up because I used to get buckets with him in NBA 2K at the Supper Club in LA. You don't know this story? Oh, fuck. I went into full drunk white boying fanboy mode where I'm like, oh, there's JaVale McGee. He'll fucking dap me up. I was like, JaVale McGee. And he just fucking like Euro stepped me and went over me in the hallway of Supper Club. And I'll never forget it. It was one of the most demeaning moments I've ever spent with an NBA player. Put it right up there with Carlos Boozer making fun of my 2010 St. Louis Rams team on the elevator in front of us, essentially. The other one was Kareem when I asked him for a picture at first before he knew who I was.
Do you remember?
Keep going.
Recently,
bad luck with basketball players.
Where so this was about a week or so ago. I texted Long and Big Cat. I went to Barnes. I like to go to Barnes & Noble to see what topics are being discussed. I like to look at the bookshelves. I like to peruse. I'm in the market for I want the Genghis Khan book. I don't want to read the wrong one. I just finished up an incredible thing on the railroad expansion through Colorado. And then I got a new Captain Cook, Hampton Size, the Wide Sea. That one just came out, just showed up to the house. So you mentioned Carlos Boozer and history. Thank you for the prompt. I saw Carlos Boozer's book, and I was like, Carlos Boozer's got a book out. And let me just read a page. I turned randomly to page 234, and congrats to Carlos Boozer for not doing one of those like some wide receiver comes out with a book with like 168 with an index, and you're like, come on, dude. Did you want to write a book, or do you just want to do a photo shoot that day? The first
is this
page,
Goosebumps or fucking Antonio Brown's biography? Go.
The first page I
17
opened
page
to
book.
it is Carlos Boozer explaining what happened with his hair that day.
Good.
Oh, great.
Very
And what
good.
happened? It was clearly Beijing.
Booze, what the fuck happened? Garnett finally asked in the second quarter.
Waited a whole quarter. Part of the second.
A mistake happened, I grumbled.
He grumbled. Keep reading.
So the guy, his hairstylist was like, man, I've got this whole thing. It works. It's great. Don't worry about it. And he's like, because I'm a little more light skinned, he was like, we're going to go a little darker to shade in some of the thinning.
Yeah.
And then he was like, it literally looked like shoe polish. I got a game tomorrow. It looks like you poured a bucket of tar over my head. You'll get used to it, were Greg's final words. He was so fired. I retreated to the bathroom and shampooed my head 7 times in a row over the sink, each time checking my noggin for any sign of fading, but my scalp was stained like beets bleeding into a cutting board. How about that creative writing?
Damn,
Good.
dude.
That's really
Yeah.
good.
What a
Yeah.
story.
Dude.
I was unbelievable. Like Duke, exactly.
That's all you do.
This-
In Alaska, there's not much to do in the winter. You just read books. It's
Like-
probably what happened to you two up there.
Like beets bleeding into a cutting board. When I read that line, I was inspired. I went
Yeah,
home and
dude.
started just working on stuff. The stage for our next game could have been bigger. We were the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics were stacked with a murderer's row of all-stars that included Garnett, Pierce, and Ray Allen. The 2 Titan teams clashing in a prime time in a regular season game. This game was broadcast on ESPN. The world was watching this game. We tipped off and went to work, but I couldn't get my hair disaster out of my mind. Every time the action stopped, I could feel the other player's eyes on me.
Yeah. This looks like somebody drew on you with a Sharpie.
That was the random
It's like
page.
a fan experience.
Yeah.
Color in Carlos Boozer's hair where you think there should be hair.
And then you bought the book?
No.
Okay. All right. Good.
What did you do? Did you Amazon preview it?
He was in the
Oh,
bookstore.
he was in the bookstore. Yeah, at
Oh.
Barnes and
But I
Noble.
took a picture of that page. I think somebody sent it. I think I have it. I think it got sent to me.
All right, we got time
Boozer's
for-
funny. You would love Boozer.
I bet
He's
I
got-
would, dude.
He's got incredible stories.
We need to get him on the pod so we can once and for all talk about what he said.
Promote the book.
Yeah,
a solid.
promote the book. Yeah, that's really good. If any NBA player could write a book, who would you want it to be? I know it's going to be an interesting answer.
Any player.
One great player and one not great player.
I'd read a Rondo book.
Oh, I would read the fuck out of a Rondo book. Guy was into bowling.
Yeah.
Big time into bowling.
Big bowler.
You can tell by his shot.
He's doing some podcasting now, right?
Yeah, he retired recently, even though he stopped playing 2 years ago.
What is going on with that stuff, dude? I'm totally with, but I'm
You
big
should.
Rondo
Have
fan.
you announced it officially? I would love if you did it this week.
I haven't
You should just do it for the
officially
pod.
retired.
Yeah.
I should
Oh my
file
God.
this week. Hey,
No,
guys.
you need to do this. You need to retire next year.
Okay.
That would be good for the show.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do it next year.
Yeah.
I'll retire on the Greenlight Pod.
I'd like to hear from Bob Pettit a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. George Mikan.
That 56 Hawks series was incredible.
Uh-oh.
AC Green.
Nice.
What it was like being a virgin back then.
Yeah, that's the
with
book I would at least
Showtime
want to read.
Lakers. And then I shut the door.
No, his game played streak was one of the lamest things in the history of history.
Really? Do you
Yeah.
believe Cal Ripken turned the lights off that night?
I don't.
Okay.
But I didn't believe Ohtani was betting on games either.
I know.
So maybe I'm the naive.
Last question. Phoenix and Minnesota. 2 organizations that are both all in, Ryan. Is it a failure? How big a failure is it if the Suns lose this series? And like, where are we with the Kevin Durant character arc? You know, I feel like we're in a weird zone here.
Yeah, Durant's gonna end up in a weird landing place because the people that don't want to give him his flowers, even though I'm not a huge fan of that phrase, and I'm not anti-florist,
No.
but It's going to be a bigger failure for Phoenix just because of the age of the guys and then
Right.
the lack of flexibility around it. But then when you add in the Timberwolves ownership thing, which apparently you can try to buy a team without any money, and somebody may say, okay, cool. And then it's like, they're like, oh, I just sent the check. Or no, I moved and I have new checks.
I missed
I
this.
swear. What's that?
I missed this.
A-Rod and Mark Lowry, they don't have the money, so now they're going to fight it out in court.
So you just try to buy a team on credit?
I guess just some kind of understanding without maybe enough vetting financially, or maybe the money moved around after the fact. Like I remember one time when I was up for buying a house, and then some market that I was invested in got destroyed, and I had sent in all my paperwork and I was approved. And then I was like, oh my God. I was like, if this doesn't bounce back, like things could get a little dicey here with the down payment and the reserves. Macon knows what I'm talking about.
Debt to income ratio. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
How are you feeling about those new real estate bills, Macon?
Oh, he's going to spin it where you feel bad for him?
No, it's totally not a spin.
I've heard it.
I mean,
I have not, Chris.
Look, decoupling, I think it makes a lot of sense. Seller pays their agent, buyer pays their agent. The buyer, the agents who can demonstrate their value are going to thrive. There are about 1,000 in our area. 35 of us are worth a shit and are going to do well. And the others are going to stop selling real estate because they're not going to be able to get a buyer to sign an exclusive agency relationship on day one, which is going to be law. All right. So I think it's a good thing. Ultimately, it'll be bumpy for a little bit, but I think if you're just coming in from Mars, it would make a whole lot of sense to have the seller not paying full freight, which was always negotiable. I'd like to say
was always negotiable.
It was always negotiable.
No, I was curious because there was a time I did a bit of a realtor rant, but sometimes it's like, it's like dating in a way. It's like if you've gone through some tough relationships, you might not be excited about the next one. And if you have a tough realtor relationship, you may just
or if you do a little digging and find out what the real estate agents are actually doing.
My world.
Macon sent me a text. He sent me a text. He goes, "Take it easy on realtors. It's a tough job."
I did not send that text. Look, my world's all about knowledge, Ryan, not unlike yours. And I'm gonna work my tail off on behalf of my clients and make their lives better than they were before they knew me. Is basketball at all like football? It's hard to beat a team 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. Phoenix has won all the games against the T-Wolves this year.
3-0. Ant stinks against him.
Is that what will happen in this series? Does Minnesota have a counter?
Do you think Ant would want to hang out with, like, if we went out with Ant for a night, do you think Ant would be a good hang? Do you think he'd enjoy hanging out with us?
First of all, everybody would rather hang out with you than me, so let's not kid ourselves there.
I don't
How about the entire
that.
city of Boston, dude?
That's fair. All right, so maybe some.
Yeah.
Macon, by the way, that was the most impressive transition out of real estate fees.
Yeah, it was
back
all
to
one
the West.
thought.
Thanks.
It was one thought.
Speaking
All right.
of real
Well,
estate, where would you rather buy, Minnesota? Have you ever told anybody you'd be able to refi at a lower rate next year?
No, that's not my bag. I'm not a lender.
Okay. Well,
Not my job.
I'd refer you to a professional.
All right. Party.
Ant would like you. Who wouldn't like you?
A lot of fucking people.
Doug McDermott, maybe?
You think Doug and I wouldn't get along? Last question, Ryan. You just went to New Zealand and you had a travelogue, which supposedly is amazing, and I look forward to listening to it at some point here. Matt raved about it. I've heard you talk about this trip. We talked a little bit while you were on the trip. Impressions of New Zealand, elevator pitch for somebody who might be looking to go there, and is it livable if I want to get out of Dodge?
Very livable. I made it down to Arrowtown because I love mining towns. You ever been to Ward, Colorado, just outside of Boulder?
No.
Mountain Law up there. There was a bunch of guys at the bar that we were at that said they wanted to put together a group to try to get these gypsies out of this landing, and I was like, what?
In Colorado?
Yeah, the guy was like, "Are you in?" I'm like, "I'm just in town for like."
They got a gypsy problem.
There was apparently a gypsy issue in this one spot, and I was like, "What's going on up here?" The guy's like, "Mountain law." So I love mining towns, love them. So I went to Auckland. Queenstown is bucket list. Queenstown is if you took Luzerne in Switzerland, miniaturized it, and then also gave it a touch of Breckenridge.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense that it combines all these amazing things of like a walkable ski village / also feels like Switzerland because you're on this massive lake where the water's purity, if you just put a bottle into the lake and took it out, brought it to the testing facilities, it would test as spring water.
No
That's
way.
how pure it is. Yeah. And it's so high above sea level at the surface, but the depth takes it below sea level. It's that kind of lake. And then I was like, hey, I want to go up to Roy's Point or Ray's Peak. Ray's Peak, Roy's Point. I think they were brothers.
Yeah.
Look into it. And I was like, what's the story? And I never drove. I thought I was going to get a car and rent it. And then I was like, this actually might not be as convenient. And so they were like, well, that's 45 minutes away. And the guy goes, there's another mountain right there. And he points out the window. He's like, that one's pretty good too.
Yeah.
And so that was like a 6-hour trek up there. So there's hiking everywhere. You can jump out of stuff. If you want to golf, you can do that. I think you could live in the South Island, Chris, be very happy.
Really?
And I would say, as far as the visuals, Iceland was going to be tough to surpass for me because I loved my Iceland trip. I rented a nice car, drove the entire outer circle, went to the Arctic Circle, technically was inside of the Arctic Circle, which is a first for me. Made it to the Western Fjords, which felt like driving on the moon. Sting. So New Zealand and Milford Sound actually smashed Iceland as far as the visuals of being in there. So you would like it a lot. I think maybe more than anybody I know.
Really?
Yeah. And the people are great. There's a little edge to the New Zealand guy though, because they've all got like a fucking weird haircut where I'm like, would that guy kick my ass or is he a nerd? And I'm like, I don't know. He's from New Zealand.
Like a fade and a mullet kind of thing altogether?
This fade, mullet, and then there'll be a bit of like an arm tattoo. And then, I was
like
at a
these
bar.
people, man. This is great.
Yeah, I was at a bar and I was like, what? I'm sizing up the crowd and they're just tanking beers at like 3:00 on a Thursday. Like, don't give a shit, right? And that was when I was in Auckland. And the guy like checks me out and he goes, you from the States? And I was like, yep. Hey, good on ya. And then I was like, that guy could be soft or he might put me to sleep in 30 seconds.
Right, hard to know.
I have no idea. I'm not going to find out.
Milford Sound looks gorgeous. Everything looks beautiful as we cycle through.
They filmed Parker Lewis Can't Lose season 2 there.
No way.
And
I knew
Lord
him
of the
from
Rings.
somewhere. All right, Rye. Well, we appreciate you covering all this ground with us. We will catch you soon.